So recently here in the Signagelive HQ, I've been tasked with going around our Signagelive studio and refreshing some of the content. And as a part of that process, I've been creating a bunch of different types of content, one of which being layouts. So in this video today, I wanted to go through how we can make use of Canva to get the most out of our layouts in Signagelive. Layouts allow you to sum together multiple pieces of content types into a single canvas and then publish that to your players. To access the layout creator in Signagelive, you're going to go to the content drop down and hit layouts. Today we're going to make a brand new one. So I'm going to hit the blue plus in the top left here and then create layout. So by default, we are given a canvas of 1920 by 1080. That is a 16 by 9 aspect ratio. Essentially, this is just a canvas that we can start putting things on. So if you are a content designer and you're familiar with Photoshop or Canva, it's very much a similar kind of workflow in that you can add individual elements to the layout. So in my case, I can add text if I want to, and that will be a static text area. I can then go into the zone properties, click on asset here, and I can type in some text like so. And you can see I've got the text appearing here. I'm going to resize that a little bit as well, just to show you. So you get real-time previews of what you can do here. Now, of course, adding these elements here, you can get a good looking layout, but where layouts really shine is where you start to introduce custom backgrounds. If I hit the background tab here, you can see that I get the option of a different color. What we're going to do today is we're going to create a custom background within Canva that will allow us to highlight certain areas of the layout and just make it stand out a bit more. So as well as that color area here, down here I get the ability to select an image, and I can select an existing image from my Signagelive network if I want to. And if you actually go onto our Signagelive marketplace, we do have some pre-configured layout templates that you can use. But today I'm going to make a brand new one. So let's come out of here. We're going to press OK. I'm just going to delete what I did here. Today I'm going to create a landscape layout, and I'm going to include 2 schedulable zones. Schedulable zones allow me to embed playlists within each of these respective zones. So what I end up building in Canva is going to be a background image for our layout that is going to accentuate both of these schedulable zones in some kind of way. And what immediately comes to mind is putting some boxes around these zones, maybe some drop shadows, just anything to make these pop. We can freely resize these zones, and these will end up being 16 by 9 zones because I just want to put standard videos in one, and I'm going to put some apps in another one here. So now I'm going to jump over to Canva, and really you can make use of any tool that you want here. I'm just using Canva because that's what I'm used to. If you want to use Photoshop, you can of course do that as well. I'm going to head to the top right and I'm going to create a new design. And I'm going to do a custom size. Our layout is 1920 by 1080. Therefore, I'm going to make a design in Canva, or a canvas within Canva, that matches the same resolution. So in my case, that's going to be 1920 by 1080, like so. And I'm going to hit create new design. Okay, so to start, what I want to do is find some kind of element, some kind of texture for the background. So I'm going to put in corporate background here and just see what comes up. Yeah, I'm going to grab this one here. So I'm going to drag this into my image and make it my background like so. So I'm going to set that roughly in the center there, and that is now my background. So now we want to build the zones that are going to house the schedulable zones when we get these over to Signagelive. As I want these to be 16 by 9, what I'm going to do is go back to elements here, just grab a square shape here like so. I'm going to change this to off-white in my case, and I'm going to stretch this out to the aspect ratio of my canvas. The reason I'm doing that is because I want this to be 16 by 9 as well. I'm going to make 2 16 by 9 zones. They'll be a bit smaller than the background, but they will sit on the layout, and then we will house each of the schedulable zones within each of those boxes. Now I've got this to the aspect ratio of the canvas, I can now hold down the shift button and grab the bottom right corner or any of the corners. And now when I drag this in, it's going to lock that aspect ratio. And in my case, I'm just going to pick a size that feels good. Let's do 1/4 of the page there like that. I'm actually going to move it a bit away from the page like so, but that'll work fine for me for now. I'm now going to hold down Alt and click on that same shape there. And that's going to allow me to click and drag this, and it will immediately duplicate it. I'm going to grab both of them by holding down Shift, clicking on both of my elements. And I'm just going to drag these to resize them a bit smaller. And that will just give them a bit more space and separation from each other. So in Signagelive, this is where both of the schedulable zones will be sitting. And what I want to create is like an outline around that. And then I want to have a drop shadow for that outline just to give it a bit of separation from the canvas. Unfortunately, in Canva, you can't actually add drop shadows to shapes. I know a way though. If you export this as a single image, so if I were to take this, again, it's my aspect ratio like so. If I were to export that as an image, I could then import that as an image and then add a drop shadow to the image itself. So I'm going to do exactly that. Okay, so I've dragged and dropped in my image now like so. It doesn't really help that it is the exact same color as the other two, But you can see that this is different to the other two elements, because if I click on this, I get an edit image option up here. Whereas if I click on this, I do not get an edit image option. So we're going to turn this into the outline, and this is going to be the content that sits within the outline. So what I'm going to do is move this roughly where I want it, like so. In fact, to make this a little bit easier, let's change both of these to a different color, just so we have a clear indicator. So I'm going to put these as yellow for now. So this is our image, and I want this positioned behind one of the yellow boxes, like so. Now if I put my yellow box in place, now remember the yellow box is the schedulable zone. So what we want to create is an outline around that by moving our image like that and just stretching and resizing it until I'm happy. So that looks good. And in fact, what we could have done, we could have just done this with one, because now what I'm going to do is delete that one. I'm going to select both of these two, hold down Alt again so that I can drag and duplicate that immediately, drag that over here. And again, we'll have to resize them. So I'm going to select both of them, resize them like so, move this one again. So we have our schedulable zones and we have the borders for those schedulable zones. And now because we added that border in as an image, I can now go and add effects to that. So I'm going to click here, head to position, select one of my backgrounds like that, and I'm going to do edit image. And of course you've got an array of effects, so I'm going to go to shadows here, and I'm going to add a drop shadow like that. And you can see that's added that to this one on the far right here. Now because of the way that Canva actually creates these shadows, I am going to have to go and resize my zone again, but that's fine. I can just do that by clicking on the zone, grabbing the corner, and just making it so it's smaller than the outline. And of course we want to just rejig the outline a little bit just to make sure it's creating an outline like so. Now be careful when you're cropping here, because if you are cropping the edges like that, if you've added an edit to the image, bear in mind, you can see if I'm cropping the right there, I'm actually losing a bit of my shadow because that's where I created the shadow. So just bear that in mind when you are moving around and resizing and cropping each of your zones. I think that looks pretty good. So we've got the outline there, we've got a drop shadow around it, and we've got the yellow content zone which sits within that. We're going to cheat again. I'm going to delete these and I'm just going to select those and duplicate those like that. So now we have two 16:9 zones, we have outlines around them, and we have drop shadows on them. Hello again, this is Future Joe, live from the edit right now. You can see this is what we've just filmed today. The benefit of adding stuff like drop shadows to layouts and just to your digital signage in general, of course it gives you the illusion of depth and gives a bit of dimension to your content, putting that content away from the background and just creating a bit more separation. There's nothing like depth to add interest and cure a flat design. Because you're adding that depth, what this allows you to do is add emphasis to those key elements in your digital signage content, which of course in turn makes it look more polished and more professional. Anyway, that's enough from future me. You can get back to the video now. But what else could lift this? I'm thinking text would be the next thing. So let's grab some text. So I'm just going to call this Signagelive Marketplace, like so. I'm going to grab the text, make it a nicer color. Let's grab this color for now. That's fine. I'm going to make another box around this just to make it stand out a bit more. So I can have that, like that. I'm just making this up as I go along here. I'm kind of just seeing what feels right. And I've changed my mind about the drop shadow, but in this case, what I'm going to do instead is duplicate that box there, change the color of it to black, like so, change the positioning of that and put it behind my box there. I'm just going to tactically try and place it like that. You don't have to do it like this. You could just do the trick that we did earlier where we imported the shape as an image back into Canvas. In my case, I've just been a bit lazy here and done it like this. Okay, so I think I'm happy with this. And essentially what we're going to want to do is make sure that these yellow zones contain the content. And that's where this gets interesting, because what we have to do now is build our layout within Signagelive and be precise about where the X and Y coordinates are for each element and the height and width of each of those elements too. Thankfully, within Canva, we do get a view of this. If I click on this zone here and head to position and then go to arrange, I can actually see all of that information here. So I can input that manually in Signagelive. So let's export this image for now. I'm going to do share and I'm going to hit download. Download this as a PNG, just in the standard resolution that we have here, which is 1920 by 1080. Okay, so we're back in Signagelive now. And from here, what we need to do is essentially add that image that we just created as the background image for our layout. So we're going to head to background here. We're going to hit change under the image area. And of course, if this was already in our Signagelive network, we could just go ahead and click the library tab there and select it from our library. In my case, I don't have that, so I'm going to add this as a brand new asset, like so. Now I've confirmed I have permission. I just need to wait for the image to automatically add itself into the layout. And there we have it. We can see the little preview there of our image that we've just created. I'm gonna press OK. And now we have our layout here in Signagelive. And of course our schedulable zones are in the wrong place now. So what we're gonna need to do is jump back and forth between Canva and Signagelive just to get an idea of what the X and Y coordinates are for each zone, or what they should be, because essentially we want them to really precisely fit in here like this. And you could just eyeball this and do it like this. But I want to be absolutely precise in my placement of each of these zones. So as I said earlier, what we're going to do to get the X and Y coordinates, we're going to go back to Canva and I'm going to click on each of those elements and I'm going to go to the position tab here. And this will allow me to see under arrange what the width, height, X and Y coordinates are. And I can then punch those into Signagelive. Okay, so starting with the left zone here, I'm going to click on my schedulable zone like so. And I'm going to go to the zone properties. So if you didn't have that open already, like I did, just click on zone properties there with the element selected. And then you have size and position, and then you of course have the asset. If I go to size and position here, I can now start putting in the data from Canva. So my X is going to be 1 to 9 in my case. One thing I have noticed in Signagelive is that we don't actually allow for the decimal points within these coordinates here. So I would recommend just rounding up to the nearest number. So in my case, it's going to be 1 to 9. My Y coordinate
is 132, my width is going to be 739, and my height is going to be 416.
You can see that is already starting to fit very snugly in that left zone there. Of course, if we want to add more to this, so I can see a little outline of the yellow there, add more height or more width to hide that yellow part of the zone as well. We're going to do the same with the right zone here. So now we have 2 schedulable zones, each snugly fit into their particular zones on the layout. And now we can go ahead and publish this. In fact, I might add another widget to this layout as well. So of course, in the layout designer, you have plenty of pieces of content that you can add here. In my case, I'm going to grab a widget here. I'm going to drag that over here. And I'm just going to go to zone properties, click asset, and now I can select an asset from my library. I'm going to select a clock in my case. So let's search for clock. And I can just grab any clock that I like the look of. So here we have our clock, and I don't love the color, so I'm gonna try and change that. I'm gonna go to widget, background can stay transparent. I'm just gonna change the text color to white here, and then hit refresh. And after hitting refresh here, you can see that my clock is now here, and it stands out a little bit more now. I might leave it that big, I think that's quite nice. And there we go. Now let's get this published to a player and see how this looks. And there we have it. As you can see, my content has now appeared on the screen. We've got the content running and we've got those shadows that are adding depth to the content. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. If you have any questions, as always, please do let us know and we'd be more than happy to help. We'll see you on the next one.